From the outside looking in, Kingdom New Lands is a simple game. Developed by a two-person team and taking place on an unassuming two-dimensional plane, it's a video game that hides a lot behind a humble facade. In any given playthrough of Kingdom, the player controls a randomly generated monarch. They're placed on a randomly generated island and tasked with making nice with the island's monstrous inhabitants, all the while trying to build a boat with which they can flee. It's a strategy game, albeit boiled down to its simplest elements. Most notably, input is limited. The game only uses 3 buttons, left, right, and use, and the deeper nuances of its strategy, whether waging war with invading creatures or simply frolicking amidst the proles, are entirely based around contextual cues in the environment. The mechanics of Kingdom initially appear straightforward, but they harbour a surprising degree of depth. Interactions are broad and signposted clearly, and all rely on single button presses. However, the outcomes of these individual presses are often relatively complex. Suppose, for example, that you want to cut down a tree to expand your land. From the very beginning of the game, this is achieved by performing 4 independent tasks. Firstly, walking over gold to add it to your coffers. Second, pressing use while next to a tree to highlight it for chopping. Third, pressing use while at a workshop to create a builder's hammer. And finally, pressing the same button one more time while standing next to a vagrant to recruit them to your kingdom. As a result of these 4 simple interactions, the vagrant will intuitively, and without the potential for direct intervention, pick up the hammer and chop down the tree, producing more gold to pick up for future projects. Most actions in the game follow a similar basic template, whether you want to build a bakery or purchase upgrades for your militia. There's something satisfying about how mechanically pure Kingdom is. Its chains of cause and effect can spiral out in any number of directions. However, in almost every case, you can easily trace each outcome back to a single button press. It's this hands-off elegance that has rightfully seen it lauded since it came out in 2016. If there's one thing that I really like about Kingdom though, and if there's one thing going unsaid on the internet at the moment, it's that Kingdom also has a very powerful emotional element. On top of the game's mechanical simplicity, there's a bittersweet atmosphere that permeates every element of the game's design, and I think it's this that has kept me coming back to it for so long. It doesn't take long at the helm to realise that Kingdom, for all of its charming depictions of rustic life, can often feel decidedly desolate. There are some obvious contributors to this. For starters, the minimalist soundtrack is sometimes so haunting that I think I can hear my dead ancestors in the low end. Meanwhile, the game's visuals do a great job of capturing the lurking threat of your island's uncharted woodlands, and contextualise the island's vast scale beyond the two-dimensional path your character walks. In raw, emotional terms, the quality of the game's style and presentation, especially, and I never thought I would find myself saying this in 2018, the game's stunning water effects, are evocative in their own right. What really strikes me though is that Kingdom isn't just an assemblage of pretty things, but rather ties the emotions evoked in its visuals and soundtrack into the gameplay itself. The game's emotional core runs a lot deeper than its constituent parts. Kingdom's design is bound together by a unifying theme of futility, and it's this sense of futility that provides the game with its unique melancholy atmosphere. One of Kingdom's unspoken features is that it's a finite game, one focused more on attrition than conquest. The goal isn't to tame your randomly generated island, but merely to escape it before it becomes overwhelmed by monsters. Enemy hordes grow larger every night, and yet the game's supply of new recruits remains constant, ensuring that no matter how long you spend bribing the homeless into military service, failure is inevitable. You can try to hold out for as long as possible, and with the right mix of ingredients you might be able to keep things going for a few peaceful weeks. However, the outcome is always the same, and in most cases approaches faster than you would like. The futility of the player's experience makes for a powerful juxtaposition. The bucolic charms of the game's visuals are contrasted with the constant wasting of each new kingdom. The knowledge that each randomly generated island will eventually be abandoned is made clear from the first victory, and it's under this lens that the game inherits a sense of transience. There are no opportunities to return to particularly pleasant islands or civilizations. You only have one save file that's constantly overwriting itself, and functionally this means that every second spent building or admiring your home is a second drawn inexorably closer to its demise. Of course, there are other games out there that are similarly unforgiving when it comes to progression. However, very few of them commit to the sensation of futility like Kingdom. Roguelites like Spelunky, for example, also overwrite your progress as you go, ensuring that you can't turn back time on their randomly generated dungeons. However, they also offer a defined endpoint. Even when you die a slow, inevitable death in Spelunky, it happens with a potential that maybe next time things will go better, that you'll become so powerful that you'll overcome the game's challenge and see it through to its conclusion. In Kingdom, on the other hand, the only true endpoint is death, or when the player switches off the game for good. There's no grand cinematic reward for building 10 or even 100 successful civilizations with the same ruler. There's no scorekeeping, no leaderboards, and no way to return to a previously visited island. Win or lose, it simply starts again. There's a cyclical, mechanical futility to Kingdom that constantly butts up against the organic beauty of its scenery. The initial realization that there's no overall victory condition can be jarring. The enemies that persistently hound you from even the smallest of islands never give up. Even if you successfully push them back to the edges of a given island, they'll still find a way to return en masse, usually with some horrifying new hellbeast under their control. Every time you shore up on a new island, day turns to night, the monsters come back, and the cycle repeats. If it isn't already clear, this futility pervades every aspect of Kingdom. Even if you take a step back and look at the metagame, the player's choice as to what islands they want to go to and how they want to prepare for them, the experience seems even more transient. One of the most glaring omissions from Kingdom is the indication of progress. Repeated visits to islands of certain sizes will unlock new bonuses and props for future islands, but beyond this initial period of discovery, there's hardly any in-game indication of the level of the player's success. Whether the player has escaped 10 big islands, 10 small ones, or keeled over and died on Island 1, there's no real tally or indicator, no greatest hits beyond 2 cosmetic enhancements to your kingdom's insignia. Completing islands only leads to more islands. The structure always remains the same, and the storage limitations of the boat that carries you away from each island means that wealth can never really be accumulated, but only spent. When held alongside the drip-fed progress of other strategy games or roguelikes, Kingdom clearly has a different focus. With no real reward for living or dying, the beginnings and ends of each island are made meaningless. The need to escape isn't so much an aim as an imposition, a reminder that your time on each island is limited. As a result, it's the in-between bit, the part where you roam around, build on, and play with the unique aspects of each individual island that's emphasised. And to be clear, none of this should detract from the fact that Kingdom is actually a very fun game. The elegance of its controls and the depths of its strategy mean that you're never bored or without immediate direction. However, the way in which these interactions are framed, the glaring transience and futility of it all, gives it a distinctly different feeling. This pervading sense of futility isn't a new concept in video games. Dark Souls, for example, practically uses it as a selling point. Tower defense games, in particular, often capture a similar sensation of looming defeat, and as tastes increasingly veer towards the fetishization of survivalism, more and more games pride themselves on the inevitability of their player's demise. Where Kingdom differs is in pacing. Kingdom is a slow game. Walking across even the smallest of islands on offer can take a minute or two, often with very little meaningful interaction from the player. In many ways, Kingdom is a meditative walking simulator taking place within a larger strategy game. Sure, the player collects and spends resources, and there's an ever-present challenge from the beasts threatening to steal your headwear, but this builds slowly and in long waves, meaning that the majority of the player's time is spent meandering from point A to point B, oftentimes with no express purpose other than passing time. The billion clicks a second rush that usually characterizes resource management games is slowed down to the point of coma. Since the turn of the millennium, Norway has pioneered a movement called slow TV. Television shows that run for hours on end and show unedited footage of train rides and bus journeys. Here in the UK, the BBC recently tried a similar thing, and although I'm not going to cancel my Netflix anytime soon, I do think that slow TV has a unique value. These programmes are consciously meditative. Leave them on in the background and they make for a nice screensaver, but pay attention and they can be surprisingly thoughtful. With nothing to distract you, the mind's focus is placed entirely on the landscape the show is depicting. These are shows that encourage inquiry and encourage reflection. Although it doesn't quite go this far, I think Kingdom might have a little bit of slow video game in it. The intermittent stretches of nothing, the long walks and the sheltered nights, inadvertently carry a similar ethos of reflection. Like the long train rides of slow TV, Kingdom's slowness gives it room to breathe and for its visual language to speak a lot louder. And it's here, again, where ideas of transience are highlighted. At the beginning of every island, for example, you're guided to your new base by the ghostly image of a previous ruler just like you, and you build your kingdom on the implied ruins of previous civilizations. Ideas of transience, of death and rebirth, are woven throughout Kingdom, right down to the crumbling logo. And these visuals, emphasised by the game's slow pacing, line up with the sense of futility conjured by the game's design, and engender a strong feeling of melancholy in its player. I think this level of cohesion between theme, visuals, and gameplay is why Kingdom has been so well received. Its design encourages its player to live in the moment and appreciate each island for what it has to offer while it's still around to offer it. Owing to the simplicity of its design, it may not have anything profound to say about the human condition, but it does speak directly to it in emotional terms. Most of all, it effectively voices a frustration that I think most people share, that nothing can last forever. I initially played through Kingdom over the course of 1 week, during which I feverishly raced to fill out my in-game map, the game's short initial indicator of progress, and to see every unique set piece that the game's islands had to offer. It was during this period that I became frustrated with a lot of the idiosyncrasies of its design. The slow walks, the futile goals, and the general impression that the game was withholding control from me. It's only recently, returning to Kingdom, that I've sincerely begun to appreciate it for those very aspects. The game does expand over time, from bear riding through to supernatural teleportation, but it's always the gentle walks from point A to point B that make me realise how much I like this game. Kingdom's melancholy theming is effective because it permeates and in many cases provides context for its underlying design. This should be held high as an example of how to work a game's theme cohesively into its mechanics. Behind the layered strategy, it's a game that implores you, through its cycles of death and rebirth, through its presentation, and through its slow video game pacing, to appreciate your surroundings and enjoy the intricacies of the interactions on offer. Kingdom is a simple game, but I don't think it should be applauded just for its terse mechanics. I think it should be applauded for making us care.